if you're working in a health or medical industry and you're really struggling with the amount of misinformation that is happening on the internet about the kind of content you're creating and the brands that you're working with, this is the episode for you. I'm joined by Sean Barber, and we're talking about how to fight misinformation in YMYL industries.
The thing that really concerns me, why I keep pushing it, is that at the beginning, when AI overviews first came out, they were like, we're not really going to touch the health industry because it had so many dangers to it potentially. And now health is the top, or if not the second most cited sector out of anyone for AI overviews. So it's totally flipped on its head, and it just makes no sense to me. If it's not going to enhance the user experience and if it's going to potentially endanger them, I don't see why you would even play around with it, in my opinion. There's a number for emergencies and there's a number for like non-emergencies, and the AI overviews kept putting the 999 number there, so they were getting inundated on the emergency line, blocking it for people who need that line. And that's just one example. If you're going to have these AI with health results, you have to make sure there's the right warnings there and they're clear, not just like in font 4 or whatever so you can barely see it, and make it quite clear. Like we see cigarette packaging in the UK, like make it very visible and source the right people. Don't do these Frankenstein type things.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Search with Candour, the podcast where I interview the best and brightest minds around the world of SEO. I am Jack Chambers-Ward, I am your host as always, and this week I am joined by a very special guest I've been trying to get on this show for a very, very long time. The one and only Sean Barber is joining me this week. You may know him as the host of the Search with Sean YouTube channel and podcast, one of the best YouTube channels and podcasts out there in our industry right now. And Sean and I have been talking about doing podcast crossovers, and we've been in contact for a long time. And I'm very, very excited to finally get Sean on the show to talk about something he has a lot of experience with in his SEO career: fighting misinformation in YMYL spaces and industries. If you don't know, YMYL means your money or your life, which basically is talking about finances in terms of your money, and health and medical advice in terms of your life. So Sean has a lot of experience working with charities in the health industry and medical industry, and it's a really interesting conversation about the strategies, tactics and ideas that Sean and the team are using for fighting this kind of misinformation that is so prevalent across the internet. Of course, it has become a lot more prevalent in the recent AI overviews and AI search and all that kind of stuff as well, and Sean gets into a lot of those details as well. But it actually gives some great content strategy advice about how you can build clear, expertise-driven content, and I think that's relevant for a lot of us, no matter what industry we're working as well. So without any further ado, here is my conversation with the one and only Sean Barber. My guest this week has over 16 years of experience in SEO and digital marketing. You may recognize him from Majestic's SEO in 2026, SEO Office Hours, Speaking at Brighton SEO, and of course, he is the host of Search with Sean, which is a fantastic YouTube channel which recently celebrated 500,000 views and 42,000 subscribers. He is the SEO manager at Macmillan Cancer Support. Welcome to Search with Candour, Sean Barber.
Hello. And yeah, I've got to say straight off the bat, like, one of the reasons I started the channel was a channel like yours. So I was watching yours and a couple others, and it inspired me to do what I'm doing. So thanks for that.
I appreciate that, mate. Yeah, I know you and I have chatted a couple of times about podcasting and things like that, and just seeing you go from strength to strength and do amazing content and brilliant weekly news episodes, doing sort of like the more group kind of chat kind of stuff. I did the chat with Sean kind of stuff as well. I think you're doing some amazing stuff there, mate. And now I feel like I'm trying to catch up with you, and now I'm inspired by you to try and do new, cool and interesting things in this medium as well.
I know. You're doing a fab job, so just keep it up.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it. But unfortunately, we're not here to just talk about podcasting. We actually did that recently for Majestic, if you do want to go and hear me and Sean talk about podcasting in a bit more detail. But we're actually talking about something I know you covered a little bit in your Brighton SEO talk recently, and something you have a lot of experience in your actual SEO career and professional career, is fighting misinformation, especially when you're working in YMYL industries. That's your money or life industries, right? And I know obviously this will tie quite a lot into your current work, working with Macmillan as well. But I guess we'll get into the topic, but I'll start off with like, why do you think this is an important topic to talk about right now, Sean?
Yeah, and I think it's important to like put across. I did my whole Brighton SEO talk on this, but it's always been a problem, right? Like misinformation isn't just a thing AI has brought along. It's AI is just like accelerated things and amplified what's already there. But misinformation been around since day dot when humans started talking around the campfire and started spreading different stories and stuff, and it's not like malicious. It's not like people are obviously like there is sort of disinformation, and that is malicious, where people purposely try and screw up each other. A lot of happens in politics and stuff. But this is more like misinformation, where it's just like, people have kind of got the wrong end of the stick, or changed the story a little bit, or merged stories together, and it comes out as something that isn't correct. And this is kind of where we're seeing with AI now, especially like when AI overviews came into play. We all know about the stones on the pizza story, which I only found out the other day, where apparently this just came from one particular thread on Reddit.
Yep.
And it had picked it up, and and I mean, that is like just one example. And then we've had thousands and thousands of examples where they've kind of created this Frankenstein result, where they just pulled in results from different places and combined them. And the problem is like both of those sources are right most of the time, but when you put it together, it becomes something different to what is the actual correct answer. So it's not a great solution. And and some of the background to it is we, along with PIF, discussed this in the talk as well, a patient information forum, which deals with a lot of the health information online. And charities like Macmillan are certified through PIF to make sure that we're following the correct procedures, that our information's always correct and thoroughly reviewed in the right way by the right people. We went to Google with a number of different charities, included like Cancer Research, Mary Curie, and we gave them a report which was full of case studies of examples of wrong results, basically, and misleading results. So that's an ongoing thing. I can't go too far into it because we are still talking with Google and other parties, other like Google platforms. But it was a good example of kind of just how many there are out there, and it's still happening to this day. And the thing that really concerns me, why I keep pushing it, is that at the beginning, as you probably know, when AI overviews first came out, they were kind of like, we're not really going to touch the health industry because it had so many dangers to it potentially. And now health is the top, or if not the second, I think it's the top still, most cited sort of sector out of anyone for AI overviews. So it's like totally flipped on its head, and it just makes no sense to me why you would, if it's not going to enhance the user experience, and if it's going to potentially endanger them, I don't see why you would even play around with it, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. I know. Yeah, in the industry, we're having this conversation a couple of years ago, like you said, when AI overviews first launched. And I remember Mark and I having this conversation. And an example I keep bringing up over and over again, because it is a literal example of the your life part of it, when you're giving health advice, and it can be literally dangerous to people who need that help in the moment. It was the how to give someone CPR question, and it took an excerpt from an article that says, do not put your fingers down their throat, and just put like fingers down their throat. It's like, yeah, that's going to kill somebody. That's quite serious. That's like you said, where misinformation matters, and where the fact that things like AI mode and AI overviews and all the other LLMs that we're discussing so much now collate all of this information, smush it all together, like you said, John, Frankenstein it all together, right, and make this monster of a piece of information. And I appreciate what you said there as well about the difference between disinformation and misinformation, because obviously I think we've like you said, politically, but culturally as well, have been in a big sort of sphere of misinformation and disinformation on both sides. But for me, I think you're right that it is fascinating how much Google has kind of flipped the script and been like, oh no, yeah, don't worry, we won't touch financial stuff, we won't touch health stuff. Oh no, wait, we'll auto generate finance stuff on the SERP for you and just give you a bunch of health advice. And like you said, I think it is in the top one or two in terms of sectors. Does that, not only as a professional, does that worry you as a person, I guess, as well as a user as well? Do you have to think about that from a professional perspective, working with charities, but also as a user as well?
Yeah, and just one more example on that is it can be very small, these and it can damage things in terms of like the NHS, for example. Instead of putting, there's a number for emergencies and there's a number for like non-emergencies, and the AI overviews kept putting the 999 number there, so they were getting inundated with emergency and the emergency line, blocking it for people who need that line. And that's just one example. The NHS is already overloaded. Like, they've already got too much going on. They don't need their phone lines also clogged up with that as well. So it's like, that's just another example. But yeah, I'm like, it's really mad that my whole viewpoint on AI is just flipping every day about it, because I use AI daily, I'm not gonna lie, and it helps me a lot with the channel, with work, with life. But I think I am becoming a bit of a skeptic now, because I think, like, is it actually, like, all this advanced tech, is it actually benefiting humanity? Like, really, do we really need it? Like, has it actually made us a better species? And has it actually, like, online, has it actually enhanced the experience? And like, okay, yeah, it makes some information, whether it's right or wrong, you get it quicker. But sometimes, I said this in my talk before as well, sometimes it's actually worth waiting for information that's correct than just getting something that's wrong quickly. That's the thing. Like, on our website, this is one example that we do. We have a call a nurse feature. So, talk to the actual experts. So you can put in your question, and you'll wait a couple of days, and then our nurses will get back to you in terms of Macmillan nurses. And yeah, you have to wait a couple of days, and yeah, it's not going to be an AI overview or AI mode conversation straight away, but I would rather wait a couple of days and get that information. But the problem is, and this is what does concern me, is that, and I'm not, it sounds like a granddad thing, like all these youngsters and that, but it's true, like, the our generation and then the ones following, the patience level is just like, gone downhill. Like, people have no patience anymore. They expect everything like quick. The internet's slow. It's like, what the hell is this? And if a web page is slow, it's like, this is rubbish, I'm going off. Or they just don't have patience. So people just, that's user behaviors now. So they're going to now expect this sort of AI sort of world. So whether you can reverse that, I'm not sure. And we'll get into it, but whether we can actually even reverse this misinformation problem that we have is also very tricky, and it's multifaceted. It's not just like the SEO team or like the PR team that can change it. It's a whole thing that has to change.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good point. Like you said, it's not just down to what is appearing on AI mode or AI views or on the SERP, even, organically. It is an overall thing that we need to be thinking about. And it's something, again, we talk about on the show all the time, not having that silo of, this is just an SEO problem, this is just a brand problem, this is just a PR problem. Like, all of these teams kind of need to be working together, especially with, exactly as you're saying there, Sean, like the way AI search pulls everything together. It will be pulling stuff from reviews and from social media and from all this kind of stuff. It's not just, we wrote some stuff on our blog and then it's fine. Like, we published some good content on our blog and problem solved. Everybody now gets the correct information. How do you go about that in terms of, working with these charities? How do you go about starting that conversation, and what kind of, I guess, like, strategies are you having those kind of conversations about?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of working our way through that right now because, as you said, it's an entire organization mindset and shift that has to happen. And I guess as SEOs, because we understand search obviously more than most teams, and we understand how algorithms work, and we understand, even like the large language models. I know we're still getting our heads around it a bit, but because they are pretty much fundamentally the same mechanisms as a lot of the things we work on, even if not exactly, it's we understand the concepts of it probably more than most teams. I think we have to be at the forefront to like spearhead these strategies and help the other teams understand how their work impacts what is appearing in search and these AI models, and how we can help them, and also how they can help us, and how we can all help each other. And like I say, it's a mind shift that the whole organization has to take in, because yeah, like you say, it's if PR are posting about something, social posting about it, but in a different way, or put slightly different context behind it, or and then email or saying something, paid team is saying something else slightly different. You haven't got that cohesive messaging and that real cohesive context around what you're putting out there on the internet. This is what they feed off. They're looking at consistent messaging and consistent signals to be able to, like, okay, that is what this organization stands for. This is what their principles are, their goals, objectives, what they're trying to, how they're trying to help users. And the spanner in the works is that you haven't got full control over all this narrative, have you? Because you've got all the third party sites and social media and Reddit and Trustpilot, all these things now come into play. And I think that is something we're trying to get to grips with at Macmillan, and we are doing. We have put some wheels in motion in terms of having more visibility over what's going on around the internet about what's being said about us, and how we can deal with that better, and also being more consistent with our messaging across all our different platforms, and getting the right people involved in the conversation early on in strategies and campaigns. I think that's important, because that is that's going to make it a lot easier to kind of stay in control of it. But yeah, I think it's a tricky one, because you can't control the whole narrative, and there's a whole historical context behind it, because things are being picked up throughout different, like, years ago, that are influencing the results now. So you still have to do a bit of a lot of time at companies are always like, what can we do now? What fresh stuff can we do? What new stuff? But actually now we have to kind of still think about what's all that crap in the, back in the day that we have to tidy up and resolve.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I think that's something a lot of us don't necessarily think about. Like you said, I think we get focused on the what's fresh, what's happening now, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, we hear so many of the search discussions that are happening, freshness being a factor and all that kind of stuff. But I think you're totally right. You have to look past all of that kind of stuff and think about what is already out there. And especially if it's, misinformation, if it's negative and incorrect, then that is something you need to be factoring in and need to be thinking about. I know, from a less YMYL perspective, a lot of people talk about brand reputation in the same way, right? But this is an escalation of that to the next level. This is, affecting people's lives in a very serious way. Why we have that your money or your life category. Do you think that is something that more brands need to be aware of, like looking historically at stuff? Or is it more about just having that bigger picture regardless of, what you're creating right now? Is there a balance you need to strike there between updating and correcting old stuff and creating new stuff, and how do they approach that?
Yeah, it's a good question, because we all have limitations in resource and time, so you can't do everything. It's just impossible. Obviously, if you can use tools, I mean, like, we're starting to use Profound, for example, and that has some good stuff in there in terms of like, sentiment analysis and which kind of sources are potentially like damaging your image online, your reputation. Those are obviously high level targets that you're going to want to look at first, if that's whatever it is, review sites or um, a listing somewhere or a third party source saying something or do, and sometimes you won't be able to correct it, but maybe there's something you can put out yourself to kind of clear up the story or be more transparent on it, or you may think it's just not worth touching and leave it, but at least you're aware of it. So I think that is the thing. And then obviously the main important thing, as you say, is to make sure those processes are in place now. So going forward, you try and limit that. No company, organization, anything across everywhere is perfect. You're going to have issues and things are going to come up. You're going to, no matter what you do, you're going to piss someone off, especially on the internet. That's just the way it is. So, but as long as, part of my presentation is about just being transparent. I think that is the one word that I feel like is so important now, in this whole world of AI search. Being transparent, be transparent about who you are, what you do, why you do it, transparent about how you put content together, how you review it. If a story does come up, try and be as transparent as possible about what went wrong or how you're dealing with it and how you've rectified it and stuff like that. And I think that is the best way you can approach it. Like I had Darren Shaw on Search Assured, and he was saying about dealing with bad reviews, and I think this is good. It's like you don't jump straight into answering the review, because that then a dialogue starts happening and you haven't really dealt with the issue. You're just starting like it's conversation and the person is clearly not happy, and you're not going to get like the response you probably want. So he says, go away, get in contact with a customer, try and rectify the issue, deal with the issue, and then on the review reply that, okay, we're so sorry to hear this, we have called you now, we've rectified it, we've done this with this is what you've got, and we're sorry, we're going to learn from this and we're going to take it forward and improve our services by blah blah blah. Again, not only is that good for a user standpoint, because when users look at this stuff, they're like, oh, okay, look, they have screwed up, but at least they've come clean about it and done something about it. And the AI models, again, if they see this consistent pattern of you doing this kind of thing, because with AI, I'm sure you've done it when you've done a product comparison or service comparison or whatever. It will say the good things and the bad things about a certain product or service. So they are going to pick up bad things, but if it says that they are not very good at this, but they have tried to rectify and they are doing this about it. So you're sculpting the narrative, and that's all you can try and do in this new world now.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, and I think you're totally right again. Like, not trying to just, it's just true, even outside of SEO, just in terms of, learn from your mistakes, own up to them, be accountable, and actually try and make it right or understand what you need to do next time that's different, rather than just, like you said, and as Darren said on the show as well, diving in and either going with the apology thing of like, we're so sorry, blah, 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 or starting a fight, which we've seen many times on Google business profiles. We had a local example here in Norwich recently where a restaurant owner was just like picking fights with anyone who didn't leave a 5-star review. And it was just like, well, people don't want to go there anymore because they've built up a reputation. And exactly as you said there, it's that kind of stuff that LLMs pull through because they are so, comparative things. Exactly as you said there, Sean, products, services, different tools, websites, whatever it is. That is a really, really common usage for so many of these AI tools. I want to use this agency versus this agency, this tool versus this tool. tell me the pros and cons, compare their uses, all that kind of stuff. I've done that many times and seen, replies quickly, good customer service, all that kind of stuff is tied in there. They don't mention that on their website. That is not, they didn't do a blog post saying, hey, look at how great we are about, customer service. It is literally pulled from the reviews, the responses, the actions that they're taking. And as you said, there's one, like you can kind of be better in the future by taking it on the chin and owning up when you do something wrong. And I think it's especially important when it comes to this sort of stuff, right? When you're thinking about health and money and finances and medical advice and all this kind of stuff, you need to be aware of the things you are doing and saying more so than other industries. Again, why that YMYL thing exists is because you need to hold them to a higher standard, right? And I know that's difficult for you guys who are working in these industries, whereas you can see like, oh, casinos can just do whatever they want online, as we've seen many examples in SEO of just people in the gambling industry just doing whatever and just making stuff up and it doesn't matter. Unfortunately, in these cases, you do need to be aware of that. So I guess like, what are some of those techniques you actually take when it comes to fighting this kind of misinformation? Is it a matter of being aware of what people are saying about you? How do you kind of proactively or reactively deal with that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it's from all different angles, and it isn't just an SEO job. But there are things that we can obviously do that can help it. And I do think there is like two different approaches. You can look at it from defensively and like more attacking in terms of like proactive approach rather, because I think defensively you have got to be like visible about what's going on the internet about you, and sometimes you will have to respond to reviews and against poor stories that aren't really that positive about you, and you've got to be reactive to that. But then you got to be proactive as well. Like we said, like updating your content, updating the processes, digital PR, stuff like that. Things that will put out that messaging that you want to be out there. And this is kind of why we did what we did with PIF, because especially in our charity sector, I don't think one charity on their own is going to be able to change the narrative in this space, because the problem is like Google's huge. We just talk about Google, but Google and OpenAI, they're huge organizations. They're not really going to listen to just one little publisher or charity. You're going to have to like be as a collective, and we know that these models they learn off, like I said, patterns and consistent messaging. So if you're all saying different things, again, that's going to be hard to change the narrative. And also in the UK space, a lot of the results, I know they're trying to change this, you're going to bring in personalization and stuff, but even to this day it's still happening where a lot of the medical information is still being influenced quite a lot by the American websites, Mayo Clinic and stuff like that. So and they got totally different ways of dealing with especially cancer. They got different treatments, they got different they obviously pay for their medical care. There's a lot of stuff out there that's totally different, so it's not that kind of helpful for many people. But in terms of like other techniques, and I know some are going to be like they're going to kind of cringe at some of these things, because I know people say like it doesn't make much difference. And I get it, if you're talking about just pure ranking, at the end of the day, some of these things may not help. But it's not all about that, and it is about that kind of showing your authority. And we, EEAT, I think is really important, and that should be considered. And the fact that users still go on websites, okay, that may not always be the case, but especially in our industry, people will still, I think, go on websites longer than some other websites, because it's that trust factor, that you're talking about a very sensitive topic. So I think people will still go to us. But, it's showing your expertise, who's writing this medical content, who's reviewing it, and why should they be trusted? What experience have they got? And that kind of thing. I know people say, "I'll just stick an author thing on." It doesn't really. What does that even mean? But well, one, we do know that Google and that are trying to tie up these sort of who's writing content and kind of drawing them entities together. So I mean that is affecting things, but also if you're looking at content that's very sensitive about a sensitive topic, you do want it really to be written by someone who knows what they're talking about, ideally. So you need proof of that. And also, and I think this is good generally. I mean, I know people talk about chunking and all this sorts of stuff, but, I still think some websites aren't that easy to follow and digest the information. And especially if you're looking at very sensitive topics, you kind of want to get to the information as quick as you can and understand it as much as you can, obviously without all the jargon and stuff. So I think the way you the way you write your content, the way that you format it, easy to follow and to digest for the users, obviously very important in any industry, but especially in things that could technically be quite, jargon based, in terms of medical information or financial information. I think that's important. And we know this is a factor, getting to the information quicker up the page rather than people having to scroll through to find that. And then, as we touched upon, authority goes way beyond the website. It's media coverage, it's partnerships, it's external mentions, like we said about managing the narrative, whether that's your Wikipedia page or whether that's third-party websites. We've got listings across all the different NHS sites. If that's potentially inconsistent with what we have on our site, that again is giving the wrong signals to these models. They're looking at both these sources, seeing the inconsistencies there, and then they don't trust that. So that's a factor, that consistencies, and just looking at making sure that your review processes are thorough and consistent, and you're transparent with your user what those systems are. And if you are using AI within that, I don't think that's a problem. You just should be transparent about it. And if you are going to add AI elements onto it, again, be transparent. It is an AI element. We have a new search feature on our website at Macmillan to help people find better information via our search engine, our internal search, and because it wasn't the best initially, and so we've added some layer AI onto it, but it kind of just directs you to the right page, but we're quite transparent. It's an AI enhanced feature. I think that just goes back to the transparency thing. So I rambled on, but that's just some of the things, there.
No, yeah, I think that's a really important point. I know you talked about this in your Brighton talk as well. It's not just the author pages and stuff, but discussing things like credentials and qualifications. This information has been reviewed by this doctor who specializes in this area. Here is a link to their thing as well as the author's thing, not just here's an author's page for the sake of an author, or, chuck some schema on there and hope for the best kind of thing. Actually proving credentials and qualifications, as you were saying there, I think is hugely important. And something, funny enough, I kind of talked about in my Brighton talk, weird little crossovers like the content creation side of things to this, is putting a face to a name as well, right? Because I know you talked about getting members of the Macmillan team in front of a camera, getting their photos, whatever it is, doing the little, short form content, long form content, whatever it is, video content makes a huge difference when you actually see a human being's, their face, their expertise actually being shared with you directly. Because again, with the AI generated video, it is possible, but it is less likely. It's still a more trustworthy source than a piece of text that could have been AI generated, like I said, if you're not being transparent about it. I think credit to you there, where you're looking at that, putting a face to a doctor's name, to an expert's name, whatever it is, because that can be really intimidating for us as users as well, right? Like knowing who to talk to, who to turn to, who should I be listening to, especially when it comes to sensitive subjects, can be really difficult. But if you know that, this person's got this qualification, you saw them talk about it on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is, you suddenly have that friendly face, for want of a better phrase. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And that's what we're trying to do. And that's kind of, um, we touched upon it on the channel recently. You were on the show, right? And we're talking about, I think so. But anyway, we were talking about like personas and that kind of like, yeah, recognizable faces and stuff. And it was kind of slightly different. We're talking about the, I don't know if you was on it, but it's on a digital news panel did, and we were talking about how news, similar vein, like where news outlets, publishers, they're trying to create personalities there, so people recognize, their news anchors as like personalities, or like they're bringing in certain personalities who are known for a certain subject to talk about a particular area, you know. So whether that's ex-footballers now talking about football on there and for certain papers or radio shows or whatever. And it's same in our industry, as we said about building up that knowledge graph and that entity map, or whatever you want to call it. You've got your chief medical officer talking about the issues in cancer at conferences and on YouTube, on TikTok, as you say. Again, the online different models and stuff will pull all this information together and recognize who he is and what he's talking about, and his specialty area, but also users will then see this and feel familiar with with them, and also trust the brand a bit more because they've got people actively going out there and discussing the topic at hand. So I think, and that works in any industry, and I know some small organizations find it hard, to do this stuff because they don't have the time or they don't have the resource. But it doesn't have to be like professional to like a, really professional. You have to sit in a room with like high spec cameras and all this stuff. You can just do it, just get in front of a camera of any sorts and talk about your industry and what you know about the industry and your sector. Because, if you have worked in it for a fair bit, you will have knowledge that you could share. So just share it, it doesn't matter what industry. And that's the thing, I talk about it from a search perspective, but you've got potentially people in social, you've got PR, you've got paid, you've got then the medical experts, you've got, all the different areas of the business that can talk about their expertise in whatever sector you're in.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're totally right that content is easier to make. Videos are easier to make than ever before. I was playing around with my phone the other day, and the ridiculous stuff you can do on your phone is just fully edit it, like audio. It cleans up audio. It does all kinds of stuff. And I saw, I got an ad, funnily enough, for like wireless mics and stuff. Everybody has the little lav mics now, the classic little like mini mic, the TikTok-y type thing, right? You can now get basically what look like podcast mics, like a full like dynamic looking microphone that will connect wirelessly or USB-C to your phone, and you can just do a podcast on your phone, film it, get the audio, stereo recording, all this kind of stuff with like what, a 60 quid pair of microphones and a USB receiver and any decent phone basically. And you're right that I think a lot of people, I've totally been guilty of this in the past and totally been guilty of this in my content. You are trying to overcomplicate it, right? You try and we need to go and book a studio and do a thing and the camera and blah, blah, blah. It's like, you can just talk to a camera. You don't even need a microphone. You can get the little clip-on mics for like 20 quid pretty easily, and they are so much better than, just a phone, a phone mic a lot of the time. It is amazing what you can do with a small budget and relatively little time and still create content that resonates, that still matters, and I think like a broader discussion, people are more interested in that stuff at the moment. There is a real shift towards authentic, well, lo-fi, but like low tech, authentic people just talking to camera type stuff, compared to flashy transitions and edits and all that kind of stuff, and high production value, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like when I go on, if I have a problem around the house, I go on YouTube and I find like a plumber, or like there's something wrong with my car. I find like a mechanic, not like a, it'd just be like some guy who fixes cars, like, on his own
With like
time, and
15
he's
subscribers or
created a
whatever.
video.
Like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's so helpful, and like,
Yeah.
that's the thing. I'm not looking for like Steven Spielberg or production level. It's just I just need I trust him because, or her, because they know what they're talking about, because they clearly have the experience, and yeah, I just need an answer to my problem, and I think and I get it. A lot of people are kind of like no, sorry, let me just
Go away.
not at all. Yeah, a lot of people are not that keen to put their face on camera or whatever, even images or whatever it is, or even their name sometimes, for many different reasons. And I totally get that. I do think like because I was the same, believe it or not, I hated any thought of doing that. It seems strange now, but it is the case. But the thing is, I don't think that you can do that anymore. I don't think with AI search and just the trust levels around the world and the competition for every different sector now, you can afford to just hide behind a desk and not show who you are to the world. I just don't think you can do it.
Yeah, I think it's a similar kind of thing. And we see these stages of evolution. I guess, you'd talk to an e-commerce client 15, 20 years ago and they'd be like, I don't want to write a blog. I don't want to write informational content. Like, I just want to sell my stuff. Like, I want to sit here writing stuff. That seems ridiculous. And now you're seeing people say, I don't want to be on camera. I just want to write my stuff. It's the same kind of thing. You've got to evolve with the technology. You've got to evolve with exactly the same one. The way the technology for search is shifting as well. You've got to be aware of what works, what doesn't work. When it comes to, if you're dealing with that kind of thing, how do you go about building that trust, that lasting trust with audiences? Is it a matter of building up your experts as these, personalities and things like that? Is it tackling it from all the different channels? How do you kind of go about having that trust discussion when it comes to, oh, we're in a bit of trouble, or as you said, Google is misrepresenting a lot of stuff. How do you kind of counteract that and rebuild that trust with customers and the audience?
Yeah, it is such a tricky thing. I know I had Andy Holland on, I had Jess Schultz on as well, talking about the FAME framework. I think that's something that people should look into, because I think like we are just humans at the end of the day, right? So we are like deceptive to, like, if we see a brand enough times in the right places, we will, whether we like it or not, subconsciously trust them more than others, when it comes to making the decision. So I think there is a bit of that, but obviously you got to like work out the strategy to make sure you're right in the right places at the right time. And I think we are, I'm not going to say we've like cracked it by any means. I don't think anyone really has. There's probably a few organizations in the world that have, but I think the thing is, like, say that there is especially in our industry, being that about those expertise and showcasing that, and those trust signals. For example, we had the information about being a PIF member, patient information forum member, and all the stuff that has to be done to make sure you meet that criteria, but it wasn't that visible, to users. So one simple thing, we've just made that a bit more clearer, above the fold rather than below the fold. And, so that was just one example, but yeah, it's that consistency across all the different channels, making sure that, you're in line with each other. You're, like I said before, saying one thing in a certain way on socials, and then a different on paid, and then different on PR. That's important. And yes, that kind of I think what's really important as well, like, and I know it's a buzzword, but the branding side of it, like, you want to be known. You need to make it clear online. You can't make any presumptions now that people just know who you are and what you do, and yeah, you can't just make that decision anymore. You have to be clear about and consistent across this. Like I say, if you're saying one thing on your website and one thing on your Wikipedia page, that's a problem. But who you are, what you do, why you do it, those sort of main questions have to be crystal clear and detailed, ideally, and backed up. And that's also like a very important thing. Backed up with case studies, backed up with stats and data around if you have made an impact, what is it? And especially for us, people are donating. Most of our funds are through donations, obviously, and what people want to know, where has their money gone? What impact has it made? And if they are going to donate, what is that going to do for those affected by cancer? So we have to make clear what that is, and we still got work to do on that. But I think that's the thing, isn't it, with this AI search stuff? And I've made a prediction. I think it is going to happen that in because we got all this agentic commerce stuff now. I think it won't be too long before you can make donations directly on the search engine to whatever charities you would want to. And the thing is, people are already asking AI models, I want to do this charity event, who should I do it for? Or I want to donate to charity, who should I do it? Who should I donate to? Or I want to leave a free will, who should I do it through? And those sort of things. And if you don't make it clear why it should be you and what impact that's going to make, you're not even going to be cited or talked about in that conversation. So that's the problem you've got. Now, it's one thing like ranking, but now you won't even be involved at all in the conversation. And one thing I discuss a lot on, is that if you're not involved in that initial conversation, say it is about cancer, and with all this like personalization on Gmail and stuff like that now, they know your Gmail, they know your search history, all this stuff. If you're not involved in that initial conversation, then potentially when it comes down the track to other things relating to it, like who should I do this half marathon for, you won't even be recommended because you wasn't involved in that initial conversation. They've gone to another charity or whatever, and that's who they're going to recommend, obviously, because it's they already know your history and your connections with these different organizations. So it's it's going to be an interesting space going forward. And I could ramble about it all day, but
that's why you're here, mate. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting, like, thinking about it from a donations perspective as well, like thinking about funding. So often we talk about SEO being driven, you get the bosses in, the client in, whatever it is, and they're like, we need to make more money, we need to sell this thing and buy more things or whatever. But actually, a donation side of things is an even more human direct result of that. Obviously, we buy products with our emotions and we're all human at the end of the day and all that kind of stuff. But which charity am I going to support is such a specific and I think very emotionally resonant thing you have to do. And that's such a different approach you would have to with an audience that you're selling a direct product to or selling a service to. So that's a great point, I think, where you, like you said, you need to approach that where you're having that initial appearance, that you're in the conversation early, you are appearing in multiple places. And again, topic that has been discussed many times on the show before, those people are going to see you organically, people are going to see you on paid, going to see you on social, going to see you on YouTube, all these different places. The massively misquoted number of however many times a brand needs to be seen before somebody actually clicks on a thing. It used to be 9 and now it's like 50 something, and then people are saying it's hundreds now. I don't know if there's an actual updated figure these days, but it, like you said, you've got to be there at the start of that conversation and be the forefront of what people are thinking about. That's often the goal at the end of the day, right? And it feels like the first step, but that is such a big process. It's such a big step to really get things going to start with.
Yeah, what I'm actually excited about the future of the internet, and obviously there's a long way to go because I think there are still people out there manipulating the results and manipulating things, and okay, maybe we'll never get rid of that, but I'm hopeful. But I think the thing is, like, it is harder now to some degree to trick the user, because it used to be a case that you could get, don't matter how many bad reviews you got or bad press, you could kind of sweep it under the carpet, because if you rank number one and you could just pay to be top results in the paid results, you could kind of bypass all that stuff that people won't really go past. We know about page 2 on Google and that kind of thing. But now with the AI results, it kind of highlights these things. So whether you want to, it's a lot harder to hide, sweep this stuff under the carpet than what it used to be. And I think that will help you if you're doing the right things. If you're not, then you're kind of screwed and you're going to have to change things. But if you're doing the right things, you should be okay, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. Like you mentioned earlier, like, oh, there's an old review that's just been pulled out of nowhere that maybe like nobody in the marketing team even knew existed, and then suddenly that's the thing that's being referenced in the AI, and you're like, oh god, where'd that come from? Oh no. Like, yeah, I think you're totally right. The fact that you can't sweep anything under the rug, I agree with you. I think there's going to be a lot of people who are still manipulating and still finding ways to game the system and all that kind of stuff. But hopefully, optimistically, this is all driven from, especially in these industries, getting the correct information to the right people at the right time, rather than just, as you said right at the top of the show, Sean, getting it as fast as possible. That we all like a frictionless experience. That's all great, but there is actually some value in waiting to get the right answer, exactly as you said at the top of the show. And I think that is really where there's maybe a big societal and cultural discussion of like learning to, like you said, get a bit more patient with this sort of stuff and actually ensure you are getting the right information before you make any big decisions. The amount of times I've heard, people say, oh, I'm using ChatGPT or what Gemini as my lawyer or my doctor or whatever. Like, that is the worst thing you can possibly do. Oh my God, please talk to someone who actually knows what they're talking about. Go and find a local lawyer or doctor or whatever it is. That it terrifies me, the amount of people that are just kind of like you said, so focused on the convenience and the speed that they kind of bypass actually getting the correct information.
Yeah, I mean, there has just been a case, we reported it on our channel, about AI lawyer actually winning the case for someone, but
Yeah.
the headline sounds really great, but it did still have a human barrister, and the barrister did all the argument for the case and won the case, basically. So it was like, the AI helped provide all the information, and they still had to have an expert human solicitor and that lawyer like look over the what AI produced. So that human in the loop is still extremely important. But yeah, I think final sort of takeout is that what we're kind of asking from Google, for especially, okay, yeah, if you're going to have these AI results of health, health results, okay, if you're going to do that, then you have to make sure there's the right warnings there and they're clear, not just like in font 4 or whatever they do, like, so you can barely see it, and make it quite clear, like on, we see cigarette packaging in the UK, like make it very visible, and source the right people. Don't do these Frankenstein type things. And also, like, they're quite good with this on YouTube, only provide results from real trusted providers. We've recommended those that are members of PIF, because we know with PIF that those members they have to follow a certain criteria to make sure all that medical information is reviewed on a consistent basis by the right people, and in the right way. So at least we know that those are sort of trusted in that sense. So if Google just followed that, I think that is kind of like a step in the right direction. I don't think too many people be as worried as they are now with the current layout, the results have.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. That's really nice. Nice little summary there for us before we head into our recommendations in the last segment of the show. Sean, I'll come back to you. What is one actionable tip people should be doing right now?
Yeah, I'm going to try and remember what I said.
Got to build that consistency like we talked about, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, I think it's just, as we said before, like, for me, it's all about building that trust. And, I'm a big believer and adopter of EEAT. And I know people say it's a bit, and there are some critics of it out there in our space, but I do think it's the best thing for users. And I think that is the main thing. So it's about, like you say, visible, showing your expertise in a visible manner, transparent about processes, and show if you make mistakes, be transparent about that, and try and make your content accurate. Obviously, is the main thing. Create content that's provide clear answers. If there is jargon in there, explain that. And make it easily extractable for AI models. I'm not going to go through chunking and stuff, but there is ways of doing it to make it easily extractable. And obviously, we could talk about there's all schema in that side of it. We said before, monitor and correct misinformation proactively rather than reactively. I think a lot of people don't really have a strategy to do that, and that's fine because most people don't. Because it's never really been a massive problem in our world before, and now it is. So we have to build that. And I say we're probably the best in terms of SEOs, the best place to take control of that. And yeah, look beyond, search, as we said before, socials, forums, all those spaces that perhaps we weren't monitoring as much before because we didn't have to really. But now we do, and it's about education around your other teams. I think we're going to have to take control of that if we've got the time and resource to do it, to educate the others around your organization about what role they play in all of this.
Definitely. Next, recommend tool, piece of software that you think deserves a bit more attention, Sean.
Yeah, I had so many, and I try to cut it short. So, I use a lot of tools. I mean, the one I really enjoyed using at the moment is the Hrefs MCP connector on ChatGPT, because that's really good, really quick to use in terms of analyzing the info and stuff on there. SEO Gets is awesome. SEO testing. It is great, especially for the new kind of stuff they're testing in the AI world, especially. SEO Stack for you can have conversations with all your data, and it's just really well put together by Daniel. And then lastly, Advanced Web Ranking is one that I always go to, especially for market data. You can see share of the market and stuff. So I think that's. But there's so many good tools. That's the problem with, isn't it? We've just got such a big variety of good tools. It's how you kind of maximize it. And obviously, that's without being said about the Search Console. It's an awesome one.
Yeah, I think that's some great shouts there. I know, what Matt's doing at SEO Gets, and like you said, what Dan's doing with SEO Stack and things like that. Taking existing data and what SEO testing does as well. I think a lot of people, I remember I had Ryan on the show a few years ago talking about how SEO testing does take Search Console data and it gives you all these cool reports and stuff, similar to what SEO Gets and SEO Stack. Being able to reframe data is always interesting. And yeah, I appreciate you giving some recommendations. I'll put links for all of those in the show notes. None of them are sponsored. We'll just give them a lovely little shout out and chuck them in the show notes. And let's finish with something fun then, Sean. What have you been enjoying recently? What have you been watching? What you've been playing? What you've been listening to? What you been enjoying recently, mate? Let me know.
Well, I went to a Pitbull concert on Friday. That was
Hey,
interesting
nice.
at Hyde Park with like 75,000 people.
Did,
So that
did
was
you did you get the ball
interesting.
cap on? Did you go full pit bull?
No, but a lot of people did. But no, that was fun. And then I guess well, I went. You see in the background, I'm into aliens and stuff. So I went to see Disclosure Day with Steven
Mm.
Spielberg, and that was epic. It's got mixed reviews, but I think I loved it. I thought it's great. I recommend it. And lastly, the Traitors. The US version. I love the
Oh,
Traitors, and
nice.
I think it's just so interesting. Like I know, like when Big Brother started, it was like an experiment to see how humans behave, in that environment. And I think Traitors is just so fascinating about human behavior because it's like they're wrong so many times. Like, someone's telling the truth and they just call him a liar and they kick him out, and it's like that just shows like with humans, we this whole AI thing, we don't know what's real, what isn't. Like we don't. Someone's telling the truth the whole time, and they're like, "No, you're not. You're lying," and just kick him out. And it's like that happens so like 9 times out of 10 that someone's actually like a faithful and they get kicked out. I just find it fascinating, like how we behave. So yeah, I love that show.
I thought the exact same thing about traitors. Like, it blows my mind how quickly an entire group of people will turn on one person because one person's like, "Yeah, but you didn't smile enough today, did you?" And they're like, "Oh, that means they're evil. They must be a traitor." It's like, that doesn't mean anything. Maybe they're tired. Maybe they're stressed. Like, but you get these one, like you said, weirdly tying into the theme of the episode, the topic. Like, you get one little piece of misinformation, and it's like, "Oh yeah, I don't think Sean was really enthusiastic enough, so I think he might be a traitor." Like, what does that even mean? What are you scoring everyone's enthusiasm out of 10? Like, what are you talking about? And like you
And then
said,
the
they'll say
next day,
one thing. Yeah, of
no,
course.
and then the next day they will smile more because they're worried that they didn't smile enough, and then they'll be like, "You're smiling too much now. Now you have to go because you're just too like smiley," and
Oh
you're like,
God.
"What the hell?"
Yeah,
Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah. I remember there was, I can't remember, I think it was a few seasons ago in the UK one, there was a Northern Irish guy who had a particularly weird turn of phrase, and it like confused so many people they just voted him out because he couldn't explain himself clearly enough without using this particular phrase. He said "amn't" instead of "aren't," as I either I am or I amn't, which is a thing a lot of Irish people say. But that freaked out all the English people, so they're like, "What is he lying? Is he just making up the word? Did he misspeak? Did he fumble over his words? Clearly he's lying." It's like, no, that's just how he talks. And he was like one of the smarter dudes in the room. I'm like, oh my god, this is mad. They all just turn into
Yeah, I
like
know. I'll be
animals.
gone.
Just
I'll be gone straight away. I'll start talking about aliens. People are like, "Get rid of this guy."
the traitor is an alien. That's how we know.
Yeah,
Claudia Winkleman is an alien. Alan Cumming is an alien. That's just it's just facts.
Elon Musk definitely is. That's for sure.
Oh, there we go. Absolutely, absolutely. Um, let's wrap things up, Sean. Where can people follow you? Check out Search for Sean and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm on LinkedIn. Check me out there. But search for Sean.com, and it's on YouTube and Spotify mainly. Probably find it elsewhere, but yeah.
Nice, nice, simple, mate. Really appreciate you coming on. Lovely to sit down and have a conversation with you. Go and check out Search for Sean, everybody. It's a fantastic channel. Go and check out all the great stuff Sean's doing. Thank you so much for joining me, mate. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you so much, Jack.
And that wraps up this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Sean as much as I did. In the next couple of weeks, I'll be having some fantastic conversations and guests all throughout the rest of July. I'll be teaming up with a couple of folks from Digital Loft to talk about a lot of more digital PR stuff. We've got a lot of AI search discussions coming up in the next couple of months as well. I'm working on a little AI search mini series that's going to concentrate on all the different questions and elements that we're talking about and asking in the industry around LLMs and AI search. And next week's episode will be a news recap. So if you haven't caught up with the news from all of June and a little bit of July as well, I'll give you a summary of all of the most important SEO news over the last 5 or 6 weeks or so. Of course, I'll be back in the studio with Mark Williams Cook and loads of other fantastic guests coming up over the next few weeks and months as well. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, have a lovely week. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.